welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I have hit 50,000 subscribers. So that means it's time for another 10 deck ideas video. I haven't done one of these in quite some time. I think this is maybe my fifth installment. And it is getting more difficult, without a doubt. And there's a couple reasons for it. First of all, because I've made a whole bunch of these videos already, or using all those ideas I've had in the past. But also, I have my 5 unique builds series, which is sort of stealing a lot of those ideas as well. So that's sort of eating up a lot of the ideas I have for interesting deck builds. But also, as I mentioned previously in a couple of videos, you know, because they're coming out with a commander for every scenario, right? A commander for every occasion, it's becoming more difficult to come up with interesting and unique deck ideas, right? Because of course, and I will get to a couple in this video, actually, it's made it a lot more difficult for me to make these lists. I actually had to cross a couple off this list because I'm like, okay, they literally just, because I've been making this list for a while, I usually do, and it's like, oh, they just printed a commander that does exactly that. So it's not really a unique, interesting deck idea anymore when you have a commander that literally does that thing, right? When you're going to build your deck around it. So it has made it a little more difficult, without a doubt. But I think I have a few really interesting ideas here. If anyone out there, again, you're looking for, I want to make a new commander deck and I need an interesting idea, whether it be with a specific commander or just a interesting idea in general. And again, I just went over choosing your commander for your commander deck, and this would be a situation. I think I have a couple here where maybe you want specifically one commander, but for most of these, it's that second method where here's just an interesting idea. What colors are you going to use? What commander you're going to use is entirely up to you, right? So let's get started. And I'm going to start out with a pretty simple one that I think, you know, it's not completely unique. I think a lot of people have done this before, and that's charge counters. This is a deck I've come back to a few times. The reason why I think this is such a great idea is because charge counters are really popular in Magic. People probably don't realize that they are. Like Coalition Relic, for example, is a mana rock that's been used in the commander format since forever. That uses charge counters, right? Astral Cornucopia is another one. Everflowing Chalice is another one. Those are all mana rocks that have been used in the commander format for a long, long time that all use charge counters, right? Blast Zone is a land that is pretty popular in the commander format that uses charge counters. So the idea here, I mean, proliferate obviously works. And this is an idea that, again, you know, Atraxa would be the easiest way to do this, but we've gotten a lot more proliferate stuff recently where you could go in other directions with it. The proliferate theme works here, but also there are cards like Core Tapper, which are putting charge counters on stuff, right? That's why I think this is a neat idea, is there are actual cards that are putting charge counters on stuff, moving them around. There's actually quite a few cards that actually work in this theme. You can even have like a Darksteel Reactor, which is, you know, again, that's a win con that was used. I would see it from time to time when I first started playing Commander. You don't really see it much anymore because getting those 20 charge counters on there is pretty tough without anyone killing you first. And here, again, it's using charge counters. So that could be a neat win con in deck. It's probably an artifact theme, although, you know, there are a decent amount of cards that are outside of it. You don't have to do all artifacts here. Like Lightning Reaver is a favorite old card of mine that I've been trying to put in a deck for a long, long time, where when it deals combat damage to a player, you put a charge counter on it. And at the beginning of your end step, it deals damage equal to the number of charge counters on it to each opponent. So you can just pile, without even getting in for damage, you could just pile charge counters on this guy. And again, that's your win con, right? It just sit there and just hit all your opponents for damage every turn, right? Again, an artifact theme also works really, really well because a lot of the charge counter stuff is in artifacts. It's an interesting idea, again, just something that they actually haven't made a commander for yet that maybe you actually might want to go with. All right, let's move on to my next idea, which I'm calling Super VOLTRON. And I got the idea, funny enough, from this card right here, Flowering of the White Tree, which I ordered recently from Lord of the Rings, and I have yet to put it in a deck. I'm not sure where. I'd like to put it in a deck. It's becoming difficult to find room for stuff, right? And what I talked about with this card is it is really actually pretty fantastic in a Voltron strategy because it gives your legendary creatures +2/+1 and Ward 1, which is pretty good to give your commander, of course, and it's only 2 mana, and for that reason, it's a lot better. Like a Voltron strategy is almost always going to be using what? equipment and aura, right? The problem with that is it's always falling off. Aura in particular usually will just go to the graveyard. Even equipment, you just have to keep paying to re-equip it typically. And with Flowering of the White Tree, it just sits on the battlefield. So if your commander dies, as soon as you play it again, this ability is essentially turned on, right? It's a static effect. And I thought, why not build a deck like that? No equipment or aura at all, right? I know Voltron strategies have sort of fallen off in the commander format, but I think this is worth it because, again, these would all be sort of static or global effects that would just, as soon as your commander hits the battlefield, they all turn on. And for that reason, it would get all the bonuses, all the protections, all the everything, right? Instead of I have to equip my Lightning Greaves right away and my opponent has a chance to respond, with these effects, as soon as your commander hits the battlefield, it has all of them, right? So for example, Bastion Protector, right? Commander creatures you control have +2/+2 and indestructible. Not only do I not have to enchant my commander, I don't have to, equip my commander with stuff, it also adds protection because as soon as my commander hits the battlefield, it has indestructible. There is no window there for my opponent to remove it, right? Guardian Augmenter, same thing. That's giving my commander hexproof. So as soon as it hits the battlefield, all that stuff is turned on, right? Bloodsworn Steward is the red version that's giving my commander +2/+2 in haste. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, the kind of stuff. And I guess you could use normal Anthem effects as well here. Obviously, it's going to depend on the commander you're using. But the idea here is I'm doing a Voltron strategy without any aura equipment at all. And again, if you want to do the challenging, because you're going to be tempted to put a Lightning Greaves or a whatever in here. The challenging version here is I don't use any of those at all. No aura and equipment. Make a Voltron deck without aura and equipment. And I think there is enough here. The other thing you can use is backgrounds, right? This is where backgrounds are great as well, because they all say commander creatures you own have. So again, as soon as they hit the table, that ability is turned on. Pretty much all, in fact, of the backgrounds they are attached to your commander. They're not doing anything. In fact, I'm pretty sure all of them don't do anything unless your commander's on the battlefield, but give you some nice effect if your commander's on the battlefield, which is what you want. You could put a whole bunch of backgrounds in as well. So again, the idea here is all these things like Bastion Protector, Guardian Augmenter, Flowering of the White Tree, whole bunch of backgrounds that I just have on the table that, it would be just like having an aura and equipment that are giving some bonus to my commander, except I don't have to attach them. I would say have to worry less about losing them, right? I'm not going to lose the aura. I don't have to re-equip them because they're just this static effect that is happening as soon as my commander hits the battlefield. And I really like my commander comes down, going to likely have haste, indestructible, hexproof, all these things as soon as it hits the battlefield. I think it's a great strategy. It's a little bit of a challenge not to use the aura and equipment, but at the same time, you have a whole lot of advantages there as well, right? Give it a try if you're looking for an interesting Voltron idea. All right, number 3 is a tribal idea. And again, I've talked about underwhelming tribes on these 10 deck ideas videos quite a bit. And again, it's becoming less and less, it's becoming more difficult to actually go after these underwhelming tribes because, again, they keep coming out with commanders that are making it really easy for you to play these underwhelming tribes. And in fact, you could even play like a Ruka Ramel where, basically fits with any tribe, right? And you could do that as your commander for this idea if you want to. But I was looking for a fringe tribal idea. I think for me, the sort of the fringiest or the neatest one is Eldrazi Spawn or Scion tribal. That is the deck. And the funny thing about this, there's a couple really neat things about this. I mean, first of all, Eldrazi Spawn and Eldrazi Scion are different. Okay, so for those who aren't familiar, in Eldrazi Scion, they're all tokens, first of all. So an Eldrazi Scion is a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi creature that you can sacrifice to add 1 colorless mana. An Eldrazi Spawn is an 0/1 that you sacrifice, right? I'm sure everyone's familiar with Awakening Zone. Great card in the commander format. That obviously would be a great fit here. Cranking out those Eldrazi Spawn that you can use. There actually is a fair amount of support here. There's enough support that you could put Eldrazi Spawn and Scion in the same deck. And again, they're essentially doing the same thing. There's actually a Lord effect for Eldrazi Spawn, Brood Warden. Eldrazi Spawn creatures get +2/+1. So now your 0/1 Eldrazi Spawns become 2/2s, which is actually pretty good. And of course, again, there's so much support for just unnamed tribes in the format in general, you could use that stuff as well. However, the interesting part here is they are doing the sacrifice thing, right? So you can sacrifice them. Like, it's very easy to get dice triggers or sacrifice triggers, you know, like a mayhem devil you could throw in this deck very easily. There's a lot you could do other than just the typical tribal stuff. Like, I give my tribe anthem effects and I attack with them. Like, that's kind of boring, right? This is actually a really unique, interesting tribe to build around because, I mean, first of all, they're tokens, so you can do the token theme, right? And again, this will play into what's the commander for this deck. Maybe I want to focus on the token theme and I use a commander, Adrix and Nev, right? So there's one. There actually is a fair amount of blue and green in this theme. So maybe I use Adrix and Nev because I'm creating lots of tokens. Maybe I use a commander that wants me to be sacrificing because I'm doing that, or having my creatures die all the time because I can very easily get dice triggers off of my own creatures. There's a lot of really neat directions you can go here. I actually saw a guy way back in the day. This is where I got this idea from. When I first started playing Commander, Corona the False God was his commander, and he was playing ELDRAZI Tribal. And of course, again, that was sort of, before there was Morophon and Ruka Ramel, that was sort of the OG 5-color, I want to play this super underwhelming tribe, because whenever Corona attacks, creatures of the creature type of your choice get +3/+3 until end of turn. That's pretty fantastic, right? And this guy, actually, I was impressed. He would have like 5 ELDRAZI spawn in play, which of course are just O1s, but then he would attack with his whole team, and all of a sudden his ELDRAZI spawn all became 3/4s. That's pretty menacing. Like, it was actually pretty good. Of course, the downside here is at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they're going to gain control of your commander. I thought that was a neat way to go with the deck. So there's a lot of different ways you can go with this deck because, again, you're doing the token theme, the sacrifice theme, all of that. But again, if you're looking for a very, I wouldn't say very underwhelming tribe, but definitely an underwhelming tribe, and one that we don't actually have a commander for yet, that's a neat one to go after, I think. All right, coming in at number 4 is my partner with tribal idea. And I've talked about the whole partner with thing quite a bit. I have my Bralin partner without, right? So we're going in the opposite direction here, right? In my previous 10 deck ideas video, I talked about the partner without idea, where you take a legendary creature that is supposed to partner with something else and you just go solo. I don't have the partner, right? Now we're going in the opposite direction. We're doing partner with, and of course, I'm not just going to do Bralin and Shabraz. Ooh, what a unique idea. No. It's partner with tribal. So we're taking all those partner withs and we're putting them in the deck. The big thing here for me, and this is something that, funny enough, when you have the partner with commanders, you don't take advantage of it at all, right? Which is, when this creature enters the battlefield, you can go search your library for the partner and put it into your hand. That's actually great advantage. But of course, if they're your commanders, it's in the command zone, it doesn't do anything. There is some shenanigans you can get into, and I've talked about in the past, if you're doing the partner with commanders, you can put like a Telgiad Stylus in your deck. And let's say someone casts a board wipe, you can tuck your commander on the bottom of your library. One of them, let's say you have them both out. You tuck one on the bottom of your library, the other one goes to the command zone. The cheaper one maybe goes to the command zone. Then you cast the cheap one. When it enters the battlefield, you can go search your library for the other one, right? Because it's in your library now, and put it into your hand. You can cheat commander attacks that way. So you can actually get into some neat stuff here with the partner with. But obviously, if it's already in my library, it's just free card advantage. All of these, and you know, again, outside of the legendary creature thing, there's a whole bunch of other ones, right? Like Blaring Captain and Blaring Recruiter. Those are non-legendary versions of this, where I cast my Blaring Captain and I get to go get my Blaring Recruiter and put it into my hand. And of course, they work together. Now, the idea essentially here is just I'm getting free card advantage. Every time I cast a creature, I go get another one. I mean, there's about 50 of them or so, right? So obviously there's probably more than you would actually put in a deck. If you were doing 5-color, I don't know if you'd actually want to do 5-color here. You could probably do 3 or 4 and still have enough, but it's just really great card advantage where I'm going to get another creature out of my deck every time I cast a creature. And again, there's a lot of shenanigans you can get into as far with the deck building process. Tells you had Stylus, all this kind of stuff, that I just tuck my creatures. Or, you know, Bow of Nylea would be another one where I can just take some of those partners. Let's say it's died earlier. I can put it from my graveyard back into my library so that I can go get it again. There's a lot of really neat things you can do there with regards to this, other than the just free card advantage. And then also, maybe you could build, like, you're searching and shuffling a lot. Is there something you could get out of that? I don't know. Brainstorm would be a good fit here because, of course, now you can actually use Brainstorm as it was sort of, as it's intended, at least in other formats, where I can put that stuff I don't want on top of my library, and then I shuffle that stuff away, right? And now it actually becomes a much more usable card that way. There's a lot of neat things you could do here, but partner with tribal is essentially the idea, where I do the legendary creatures. And could you do those as your commander? I don't know, because I think you could get 3 colors. I probably wouldn't do the partner with commanders as my commander for this deck. I would do another one. Could you do Morophon here? There is a lot of humans here, maybe. Like, I don't know. You'd have to do the research. I'm just throwing out ideas here. Speaking of the searching and the shuffling, I'm going in the opposite direction now. And again, this is exactly what I'm talking about with, I have these ideas and then, now we've got a commander for it. And this one, I was going to cross it off the list, but I stuck with it. And that is the forced search or shuffle. This is an idea I've had for a long time. And I've seen other people do it as well, where I'm forcing my opponent to either search or shuffle their library so that I can get some advantage off it. And of course, everyone's going to say, hey, well, River Song, they came out with a commander that does that already, right? Whenever an opponent scries, surveils, or searches their library, you put a +1/+1 counter on River Song, then River Song deals damage to that player equal to its power. And funny enough, I had a patron who made a River Song deck, and they were having trouble coming up with ideas for it and things to do with it, and so they tasked me with doing it, and I went ahead and built them a version of the deck. And as I built the deck, I realized, you know what, there is still a lot you can do here outside of a River Song deck for a couple of reasons. First of all, and anyone who has a River Song deck, I'm probably going to be giving you a bunch of ideas here. The shuffle thing works as well, right? What a lot of people are doing with their River Song deck is they're looking for things that are going to make your opponent search or get some effect off of searching. But with searching comes shuffling. So a Psychogenic Probe, for example, whenever a spell or ability causes a player to shuffle their library, Psychogenic Probe deals 2 damage to that player. So that goes in your River Song deck, right? Again, that's what I'm talking about with the searching, but also shuffling. Shuffling and searching go together. Anytime you search your library, you're going to be shuffling. So any effect that also triggers off of shuffling works with the searching. So that should probably go in your River Song deck, because likely you're going to be forcing your opponents to search all the time, which then will cause them to shuffle, which then will cause them to take 2 damage off of your Psychogenic Probe, right? So you would be doing all that. And, this deck, maybe River Song could go in the 99. There's a lot that you can do outside of that, again, because River Song's ability is very specific in the way it's worded, right? Whenever an opponent scries or surveils or searches their library, put a +1/+1 counter on River Song. So they're searching their library, okay? It doesn't work if you're doing something that searches their library. For example, if you have a card that searches their library for something, that doesn't work here. If you have a card that forces them to shuffle their library, that doesn't work here, right? When I first saw River Song, one of the first cards that popped into my head was Soldier of Fortune, right? 1 red mana human mercenary. Pay a red and tap. Target player shuffles their library. That's a shuffle effect, not a search effect. So that's not going to do anything with River Song, but it does do something with a card like Psychic Surgery, which again is a card that I would probably put in that River Song deck. I think it would work, but it also works with the Soldier of Fortune as well. Whenever an opponent shuffles their library, you may look at the top 2 cards of that library. You may exile one of those cards and put the rest on top of the library in any order. So that sort of works with the River Song, but it works even better with the Soldier of Fortune, right? Again, the searching and the shuffling work together. If my opponent casts a Vampiric Tutor, Psychic Surgery is a fantastic answer there, because they're going to put it on top of their library. They just searched their library and then shuffled. So that's going to trigger your Psychic Surgery. You look at the top 2 cards and exile the one that they were going to give to themselves. So that's a great way to hose them there. Also works with this River Song, also works with the Psychogenic Probe, and also works with the Soldier of Fortune, because with the Soldier of Fortune, I can just pay 1 red mana, force them to shuffle their library. They're not actually searching, they're just shuffling, but that will trigger my Psychic Surgery so that I can manipulate what they're going to be drawing on their next turn, right? It's sort of works out to be like a Lantern of Insight combo in a way. You can also play the black stuff outside of a River Song deck deck like Ob Nixilis Unshackled, which of course says whenever an opponent searches their library, that player sacrifices a creature, loses 10 life. Wow, that's pretty powerful, right? So now I can start doing all that stuff as well, and I can put stuff like Marilyn the Mornsong, which again is going to force a search, right? I think black is really good in these colors. That's, again, one of the drawbacks about Riversong is it doesn't have black, so you can't use all the black stuff, which is great with the forcing, searching, and all that kind of stuff. Scheming Symmetry is another one that will work great in this theme. Of course, Opposition Agent is probably the best card that will work in this theme that you won't be able to play in a Riversong deck. So maybe this deck is a Grixis deck that is using all the Riversong stuff and then also using the black stuff as well. You know, that's why I think, even though they've printed a commander that does this, I think we can still make a unique, interesting idea here that includes the black and includes a lot of the force shuffling effects that don't necessarily work with Riversong as well, right? So I think it's a pretty neat idea. All right, and now we're getting on to probably, as we get down to the list, we're getting to the more janky, interesting ideas. And again, these are just ideas for decks. They're not necessarily strategies or themes. There's a lot of different things I threw into this list this time. This is probably the most diverse list that I've made. The next one I'm calling Maximum Commanders. And again, there isn't a ton to this, but I think it's an interesting idea. I got this idea from the Nadir deck I made recently. It was Nadir and Ravos, I think I ended up settling on, where I was in a bit of a token theme. I was in a sacrifice theme. I was on a couple different themes. And I realized, hey man, there's a Elenda fits in this deck really nicely. Felice fits in this deck really nicely. What I realized is there's a whole lot of commanders that fit into the deck that I was making, to the point where, man, I could almost swap out Elenda as the commander if I wanted to, right? Now, this is a very restricting idea because there's only certain color combinations where this would work, but essentially the idea is, and it's pretty far out there, but it's a neat one. Again, if you got 50 commander decks and you're looking for an interesting thing that you've never done before, this is a pretty neat one. I call it Maximum Commanders for a reason. I'm going to have the maximum amount of commanders that I can in a deck, right? So what that means is, any of those other legendary creatures that are in my deck, I can just swap them out, right? So I have, again, just saying I have a black-white deck, because again, there's a lot of black-white commanders that will fit there. I can swap it out. If I'm doing an Aristocrats theme or a Life Gain theme, those are the big ones. Either of those scenarios in black and white, I could probably easily have 4 or 5 legendary creatures in my deck that'll do exactly that, right? So what does that mean? What that means is every time I sit down, I can just swap out the commander, right? Depending on the situation, things might change a little bit. It might change depending on who you're playing with. You just want to try something different. Maybe you just want to do something fun and you roll a dice every time you play, like you have them all numbered. And who's going to be the commander for this game? I roll a 6-sided dice, and of these 6 commanders that will fit in my 99, again, you don't have to swap any cards out in your deck. I swap Elenda for Felice. Let's just swap places there, right? That's the idea for the deck. Or maybe is it, like there are certain color combinations that work really good here. Is it has, as we all know, an absolute ton of Spellslinger commanders. And again, I imagine if you're making a Niv Mizzet deck, for example, you're likely going to have 2 or 3 other legendary creatures in the deck that are doing the when you cast an instant or sorcery theme, right? So it's very easy for you to just swap them out. Now, of course, Niv Mizzet's probably the best there, but still, having Veyran as your commander ain't so bad either, right? Having Mizzix as your commander ain't so bad either. So it's very easy for you. I mean, there you could probably have 20, right? You could probably roll a 20-sided dice right before every game and decide which of those creatures is going to be the commander for your deck in that given game. You know, this is funny because I think the more colors actually doesn't necessarily make it better. You know, you could have a whole bunch of commanders that do the token theme where maybe it's a 5-color deck and I could swap them out, but then how many 5-color, right? So that's why it doesn't really work with more colors. It actually works better with less colors where, you know, I have a red goblin deck, for example, right? This theme actually, I think, probably works with less colors better. So if I have a mono red goblin deck, obviously it's very easy for me to find 5 or 6 commanders that I can just swap out. I mean, Krenko's going to be the best, but there's a whole bunch of other really good ones as well, right? That's the deck. I know it's not much, but maximum commanders. I have like 5 or 6 or maybe even as much as 20 commanders. They're in the 99, just so we're clear on what's happening here. These creatures are in the 99 of my deck. So of course they're great in the 99, right? Niv Mizzet is great in the 99 of any Izzet Spellslinger deck. He's also great as the commander, so I can just swap them all out. Just trade places. That's it. We're just trading places with the 99 legendary creatures and our commander. Every time we play a game, it's a little bit different. Again, you can go whatever purpose you want to use for figuring out what one is going to be the commander for each given game is up to you. You could power it down, right? So I have a Niv Mizzet deck. Niv Mizzet is, again, probably the most powerful option there. And now I'm playing in a pod that is less powerful, right? We're now in like a power range 6 or something. So maybe I grab that new guy from Wilds of Eldrazi. That's going to be my commander for this game because now I have a less powerful version, right? I think it's a neat idea. All right, let's move on to another interesting idea. And this gets into a little bit of a rule situation here, funny enough. And I think I made a short about this recently. I kill you with your own commander. This is the idea for this deck, and a lot of people might not be aware of this, okay? So commander damage, how does it work? Again, I made a short about this recently. Of course, we all know, I think, that it's 21 commander damage. We probably don't all know, and that's what I was clarifying in this video, that it's only combat damage, right? Just to clarify, commander damage, the 21, that number you're getting to is only combat damage and nothing else, right? So getting back to my Browlin deck, there's a commander that is doing lots of non-combat damage, right? Every time I discard a card, it's dealing 1 damage to all my opponents. That doesn't count towards commander damage, right? If it did, I would win a lot more games with that deck. It would be really easy. Just wheel a couple of times and I win, right? No, it's only combat damage. However, again, the part that maybe even more people aren't aware of is it's combat damage from anyone's commander. It doesn't matter, right? If my opponent has a Voltron commander over here, let's say I'm player 1, player 2 has a Ural deck, big Voltron commander, player 3 has, I don't know, some really powerful deck. I'm really worried about him. I can steal the Ural. Okay, I have some steal effect, one that doesn't target, maybe Reigns of Power. I steal their commander, and I can attack player 3 and kill them. It doesn't have to be my commander. It just has to be a commander currently involved in the game. So that's kind of the idea. Now, of course, this idea is really fringe and maybe only good for certain play groups where a lot of Voltron commanders are played. It's a steal theme, right? So the idea here is I'm going to kill you. I can kill other players with your commander, but I can also kill you, right? That's, again, something that people might not be aware of is you can kill somebody with their own commander, right? I can steal your Ural and kill you with it if it's 21. It becomes difficult. A repeatable steal effect is ideal here. I don't know if, how hard is this to do? I don't know. If I got a Dominus of Fealty in my deck, like red and blue are probably the best colors here for this because they have the majority, if not, I would say 99% of the steal effects. I guess you could do the permanent steal as well, right? You wouldn't have to just do it every single turn. I could just steal your commander and then hit you with it. Again, the funny, interesting thing here is you go back to the Bastion Protector thing, right? That idea. Commander creatures you control have +2/+2 and indestructible. So funny enough, that idea, the Super Voltron idea, works here, where let's say my opponent's playing an Atraxa deck. I can steal their Atraxa, and if I have a Bastion Protector in play, that is a commander creature that I control, right? Again, the wording is very important here. The background thing doesn't work here because that specifically says commander creatures you own. So that won't work. But the Bastion Protector, all those guys, right? Guardian Augmenter, that's commander creatures you control. So that's a neat way to sort of turn on the whole Voltron thing. If your opponent's just playing an Atraxa Super Friends deck or something, I'm going to steal your commander, turn it into a Voltron commander, and then kill you with it. It is a janky idea, without a doubt. Again, we're getting to the more janky ideas as we get towards the bottom here, but it's a neat one, right? And again, for those who don't know, you can kill someone with their own commander with commander damage. I think it's a pretty neat one. All right, getting to number 8, and this is getting into a more specific idea where I'm sort of combining a lot of neat ideas that I had that I think actually work really, really well together. So I talked about VHAL Candlekeep Researcher in my last 5 builds video, I think, and all the neat things that you can do there. And I'm taking one neat thing that you can do here and making a deck. So this is a deck, one of the few on this list where I'm actually saying this specific commander you are building around. We're building around VHAL Candlekeep Researcher, which of course, tap, add an amount of colorless equal to VHAL Candlekeep Researcher's toughness. This mana can't be spent to cast spells from your hand. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do here. A whole bunch of really neat things, as I talked about in that video, and I encourage you to go watch that video. You know, if you're thinking about doing this idea, to think about all the other things that you can add into this deck, because the idea I have here is not going to eat up a lot of deck space. What it's going to do is give you a really neat combo slash win con to eventually get to, right? So what I can do is I can do the stuff that you would already maybe normally do in a VHAL deck, like Impulse Tribal. You know, you're going to need red in this deck, and there is 2 red backgrounds, funny enough, that work with the whole Exile Tribal thing. Passionate Archaeologist and Tavern Brawler. Can't believe I actually remember that. So those are the 2 that deal with Exile Tribal. So those are going to be the ones that I think you probably want to use here for a number of reasons. Not the least of which, well, first of all, you need red, but also, of course, the Exile, casting things from Exile works with your commander, right? So pick one of those backgrounds. That's probably going to be the background for this deck. You need red, right? And the reason you need red is because I am combining another idea that just works great here. A combo, a short that I put on my channel recently that works perfectly in this scenario, which is Homing Sliver. So Homing Sliver says each sliver card in each player's hand has Sliver Cycling 3. And of course it has Sliver Cycling 3. And with Maskwood Nexus in play, now all my creatures, of course, they're all slivers, are all going to have Sliver Cycling, which means I can discard any of the creatures in my hand to go get any other creature out of my deck. And I can go get my Falkenrath Gorger, which says each vampire creature card you own that isn't on the battlefield has Madness. The Madness cost is equal to its mana cost. So of course, the Madness works with the cycling because cycling is a discard, right? Now, the timing here is I can't just discard my Sliver Cycling guy to go get my Madness guy and then play him, because now my Sliver Cycling guy's gone. We need him. We need that guy in play, right? In order to get that ability from our Homing Sliver, it has to be on the battlefield, right? So we got to play our Madness guy first, right? Our Falkenrath Gorger has to be on the battlefield, and our Maskwood Nexus has to be on the battlefield. Then we can discard our Homing Sliver, which of course is a vampire. So when we Sliver Cycle it, discard it, we can now pay 2 and a red and put it directly onto the battlefield and then repeat the process. Now, that's very mana intensive, right? Just to do this with our Homing Sliver cost 3 for the Sliver Cycling and 2 and a red. So that's 6 mana. That's a lot. But that's why this works so good with VHAL Candlekeep Researcher, of course, right? Because you're adding colorless mana and it can't be used to cast spells from your hand, but Madness is casting stuff from Exile. Again, that's why it works with the Exile Tribal stuff as well. So now when we Sliver Cycle our Homing Sliver, we are discarding it into Exile, right? That's what Madness says. Madness says you discard this card into Exile, so you're casting it from Exile. So if I have my Passionate Archaeologist in play, now I get to throw that damage around as well as I'm casting these. And of course, we can use our VHAL to cast this stuff, right? And again, very easy to put on tappers in this deck. The first card that I'm going to Sliver Cycling to go get is maybe, I don't know, my Chakram Retriever. I have my Chakram Retriever in my hand. Now I will Sliver Cycling that using my commander, that all that colorless mana. And again, I'm going to have like a Slagworm Armor on my commander or something so that it's adding a whole bunch of mana. Again, this is why the idea works so great here. I can both use that mana for the cycling ability, and I can use that mana to cast that thing from Exile. So all the colorless mana here, 3 mana that I'm cycling my Chakram Retriever, I can use my VHAL for, and the 4 colorless that I have to cast it from Exile, I can also use my VHAL for. So I can use it for all of that. Then I put that into play, and now every time I'm casting something from Exile or otherwise, I can untap my commander and continue to do it, right? So that's why it's a really neat fit with everything that's going on here. And again, remember, we're casting stuff from Exile as well. Now, other than that, what are you doing in the deck? Well, everything else you are doing in the deck is just going to fit with the theme of what you're doing. Just throw in whatever you want. Again, the Colossus of Akros that I talked about in that video, there's a really neat card that I've always wanted to use in a deck. Now I can Sliver Cycling, go get my Colossus of Akros. Of course, it costs 8 mana. That's a lot, but I'm just going to discard it and cast it from exile. So I can use my VHAL to cast it from exile. Going to hit my opponents for a lot of damage with that Passionate Archaeologist as well. So that's why it's making everything easier. And then when it enters the battlefield, of course, it has that Monstrosity 10 that I can also use my VHAL for, right? So just a lot of neat things you can do here. You can throw in the Realm Breaker Invasion Tree combo if you want as well. A lot of people mentioned in that short, oh, why would I do this when I can just Realm Breaker? I mean, I guess you could do that too. But again, sacrifice Realm Breaker, the Invasion Tree, search your library for any number of Praetor cards and put them onto the battlefield. That costs 10 mana. So again, works great in this deck because VHAL is giving you all that colorless mana that you can use to activate that a lot quicker, right? So there's a lot you can do here. Again, the base for the deck is it's a VHAL deck with a red background, preferably. I mean, I think entirely. And then you're doing the Homing Sliver, Falconwrath Gorger, Maskwood Nexus thing, which of course, because you're searching for any creature in your library, you can do a lot there. And also because you're doing the Maskwood Nexus thing, you can do a lot there as well, right? So there's a lot going on here. Essentially, it's a blue-red VHAL Candlekeep Researcher deck. Wherever you want to go from there is up to you. All right, idea number 9 is a really fringe idea. Again, if you're that guy who's got 50 commander decks and you're looking for a really unique, interesting idea that you've never ever done before, this is one for you. And this is purely an aesthetic one. This is not going to be necessarily a theme or a strategy again. This is purely an aesthetic one, right? What a lot of people like to do sometimes with their commander decks is foil them out. Or I guess in any format, people have the deck that they really love. They want to foil out the whole deck, which means, of course, every single card in the deck is foil. That's really expensive. I got another interesting way to go with that same similar theme, except probably a lot less expensive. I assume it would be a lot less expensive anyway. And that's white bordered, okay? White bordered cards, I typically hate it. I got a little bit of an OCD thing going on. So, and I think you can see it in one of my gameplay videos where one of my patrons played a white bordered land and I was like, ugh. And of course, none of the other cards in their deck were whiteboarded. They just had that one land and it just like sticks out like a sore thumb. You know, I don't want a whiteboarded version of a card in my deck unless the entire deck is whiteboarded. Then it's okay, right? So that's the idea here. Again, a purely aesthetic idea, which is your entire deck is whiteboarded. You have a whiteboarded deck. I don't know if anyone's ever done this before, but you can. Now, of course, the most difficult part of this strategy is you need a commander. The problem with the whole whiteboarded thing, and again, for those who don't know what how the whiteboarded thing works, it used to be that reprints were whiteboarded, right? So what you would have is if a card was reprinted, if it was a reprinted version of an original card, that would be whiteboarded to signify that it wasn't the original, it was a reprint. But of course, they stopped doing that. I believe 8th edition was the last time, again, the core sets, right? 4th edition, 5th edition, 6th edition were the whiteboarded, you know, the whole thing was whiteboarded. 8th edition, I believe, was the last set that they did that. The other issue here is they didn't print legendary creatures in those sets, right? Legendary creatures didn't get reprinted in reprint sets. Typically, the way they used to do things is legendary creatures only got printed in the set that they were originally from. They didn't reprint them. So you couldn't get a whiteboarded legendary creature. However, there are some fringe sets where that is the case, right? So for example, Hachette UK, I don't know what that is. It's some set that came out that has this funny little Pegasus symbol, and it's a whiteboarded set because of course it's reprint, and it has, for example, Patron of the Nezumi. There is a white-bordered Patron of the Nezumi. So that is a legendary creature that can be the commander for your deck that is white-bordered, right? Again, that's where you're gonna have to start with this idea. If you wanna do this idea, you gotta start with your legendary creature. You gotta find a white bordered legendary creature. That's the most difficult part. And then of course you are secluded to just doing whiteboarded cards, right? I can't just put a Infernal Grasp in my Patron of the Nezumi deck because of course there is no whiteboarded Infernal Grasp. I can only use cards that are whiteboarded, right? So you're very restrictive. If you're looking for a really restrictive deck building challenge, this certainly is one, right? Funny enough, the OG dragons that were originally used for this format, right? The Elder Dragons, those were reprinted in, I mean, the original Legends set, of course, had the black border whiteboarded version, but then they were reprinted. Of course, in Chronicles was the reprint set there, and it was the whiteboarded version. So that would be an easy way to go, where you could just use those. There are a few. There's very few, but there are a few sets. Of course, Portal 3 Kingdoms is probably going to be your best bet here. That is a whiteboarded set. It only came in whiteboarded. Funny enough, it's not a reprint set, so I'm not sure why they did whiteboarded there. But not only is it a whiteboarded set, it's also got a ton of legendary creatures. I suppose the downside there, though, is a lot of those cards are really, really expensive. So especially the whiteboarded version ones. So that could be tough as well. But again, that's another set where maybe I can find a commander from that set. Again, you have to find your commander first that is going to be whiteboarded, and then you have to go from there. Only using whiteboarded cards, right? That's the idea here, is my entire deck is a whiteboarded deck. I think it's an interesting, janky one for sure, and a really challenging deck building strategy. All right, I'm going to end off with one that is certainly not a big secret, no pun intended, or I guess maybe pun intended here, which is Secret Commander. And I thought I would talk about it a bit because there's a lot of different directions to go. Obviously, it's something that's been done in the Commander format for a long, long time. I've done it myself quite a bit. And it is something that a lot of people like to do in order to build around a card that obviously isn't typically going to be a legal commander in the Commander format, right? So I thought I would cover the different directions you could go here, right? There's quite a few, and I will use my own experience with it in order to talk about, for other people who are not familiar with this, newer Commander players and all of that, but also the different directions you can go with the whole Secret Commander thing, right? So again, the Secret Commander idea is I have a card in the 99 that I'm actually building around, not necessarily the commander that I have in the command zone, right? I talked about this recently in, again, my 5 builds video about Kethek Crucible Goliath, a pretty good commander if you want to do the Secret Commander thing, because of course he can hunt out that card, right? That becomes by far the biggest issue for you with this whole Secret Commander thing is I need that one card in the 99 and I don't have access to it like I do with my commander that's in a command zone. That can be the most difficult part. So if you're doing this idea, whatever the Secret Commander idea is, the number one issue you have to start with is I got to get that card, right? That's where you got to start. How am I getting it? If it's a creature and I'm in green, that's a lot easier, right? Because green has a lot of creature search. So that's going to be pretty easy for me, right? If I'm playing a mono red deck and I need, say, a creature, that's going to be a lot more difficult for me. I'll give an example of one I built a long, long time ago, my Dragon Lord Atarka deck. And the idea for that deck was a Secret Commander Feldon of the Third Path, right? I saw a guy play his Feldon of the Third Path, which of course is a legendary creature. It can be your commander, but it was a mono red deck and he was doing a lot of really neat things there. But I thought, man, you're so restricted in mono red and green. Like Feldon's ability works really good with the ETB creatures. Like imagine doing an Eternal Witness every turn or a Rex Sage every turn, right? So I thought, man, if I could add green in there, that would be fantastic. So that was the idea for that deck. It was an ETB strategy, but it was essentially a Feldon of the Third Path Secret Commander deck where a card like Survival of the Fittest is an absolute slam dunk because not only does it allow me to search out my Feldon of the Third Path very easily, it also puts stuff in my graveyard that I can use my Feldon for. I want creatures in the graveyard that I can be copying. So that was the idea. I actually had a legendary creature, right? So this is the one direction you can go with Secret Commander. I actually have a legendary creature that, yeah, I could make the deck with it, but I want to add in more colors. You know, it's a commander that if I could only use those other colors, it'd be so much better. So I'm using a legendary creature that I can use other colors with. That's one idea. Probably the main idea is I'm using a non-legendary creature, right? Getting back to that Kethek idea. Now I have a creature that is not a legal commander that I want to build my deck around. And you can rule zero it, of course, but if nobody is interested in the rule zero thing, now I have that creature that is a really, really great build around as a commander, but of course it's not actually a commander. So I got to put it in the 99 and then find a commander that fits and then build around it that way. Again, I have done this myself many, many times. The most recent version, which again, I talked about in my Choosing Your Commander video, I have the card I'm building around, but I'm not building around my actual commander, so I got to find a commander that fits. And I talked about my Ghost of Ramirez DiPietro and Ikra Shidiki, where I'm finding partner commanders because I needed Sultai colors. Why did I need Sultai colors? Because I was building around Torrent Elemental. Torrent Elemental was the secret commander for that deck because I thought that was a great card to build around. The reason I chose those as the commanders, funny enough, I had Nashi originally as the commander. commander for that deck because my thinking was, I needed a Sultai commander. And my thinking was, okay, Nashi is exiling cards from graveyards, and I want or I can have my Torrent Elemental in exile because, of course, I can get it out of exile. There's a little bit of exile shenanigans going on in that deck. My idea was I change the creature types so that the cards in my graveyards are rats so that I can exile anything, right? And you could do that in a Nashi deck anyway. Then I can exile my Torrent Elemental from my graveyard if it dies. Now, I just thought there was too much hoops I was jumping through there, so I would get rid of that idea because I didn't want to have to do the creature type changing thing as well because that was too much. I was doing too much in the deck. So I went with Ghost and I went with Ikra, mostly because of Ghost, because Ghost actually worked really well with putting stuff into my graveyard, which is what I wanted to do a lot in that deck, right? Auric Lore Mage being a slam dunk where I can throw any card in my graveyard and then my Ghost will get it out, right? So it's an alternative way to tutor for the cards you need. Again, you have to do a lot of tutoring with the whole Secret Commander thing. So it's a way for me to get my Torrent Elemental or any other card that are working with the strategy, right? Because of course I'm building around Torrent Elemental, so I have a bunch of cards that work with the Torrent Elemental that I also have to get out of my deck. So I'm solving an issue there. The other reason why both of those commanders work really well in this strategy is because of course they're both dealing damage, right? My Ghost wants to get in for damage, and my Ikra Shadiki also wants all of my creatures to be getting in for damage as well, and that works great with Torrent Elemental. As I talked about when I talked about it in a should be commanders video, which works with the whole secret commander thing. Again, you can take all those should be commanders and you can stick them in the 99 and do the same thing as well. It works really well because of course I'm tapping down all my opponent's creatures when my Torrent Elemental attacks, so it's guaranteed that I get in for damage. So that's why that works there, right? Torrent Elemental is fantastic if you want to be getting in for damage in general or getting combat damage triggers, because when it attacks, it taps down all your opponent's creatures. So again, there's another idea where I'm taking a non-legendary creature and building around it, and it's the secret commander in my deck. And then the other reason, I guess there's a lot of ways you could do this, but essentially the other one is it's not even a creature at all. I have an enchantment that I'm building around, right? Or a land that I'm building around. That is essentially my secret commander. At that point, is it a secret commander? I don't know. Again, I will reference my Dragon Lord Dramoka deck where I'm building around essentially Painter Servant is a big one. So that's a creature that I'm building around that I guess you could kind of call it my secret commander there. I'm also building around Urborg, right? Urborg is a really, really important card in that deck where I want to turn all my opponent's lands into swamps. And again, I did a deck doctor for one of my patrons recently where now we have another version of Urborg, of course, Yavimaya, where I can make all my opponent's lands into forests as well, or mine, right? Both work. With both Urborg and Yavimaya, now I can build an entire deck around that. Rather than just building around Urborg, I can build around Urborg and Yavimaya. So those become essentially your secret commanders, the Urborg and the Yavimaya, where, it could be a black-green deck, but it doesn't have to be because neither of those cards are either black or green, funny enough. But I want to be able to search for them, so you probably want like Sylvan Scrying, that ability. Again, you got to get them. If you're building around those cards, you got to get them in your hand. So if I'm building around, I want to turn all my opponent's lands into swamps, and there's a number of reasons you could be doing that. Or maybe I want to turn all my opponent's lands into forests, and there's a number of reasons you could be doing that. And also, again, I could do it to myself as well. Maybe I want to turn my lands into forests. There's a lot of reasons to do that as well. So again, that's the deck. Now I have a couple of lands, and again, you don't need one secret commander. You can have a couple. So essentially, maybe Urborg and Yavimaya are my secret commanders for the deck as well. So you can do I'm building around just a random card in the 99. That's what I'm building around. It's sort of my secret commander as well. So I guess there is an explanation of the whole secret commander thing, but again, a lot of different ideas. Enchantments are a big one. There's a lot of the I win the game enchantments. I don't know if that's necessarily now your secret commander, but it's sort of going down. I'm building around Baron Glory. That is the kind of secret commander for my deck, but that's what I'm building around. I'm building around a card in the 99 that I need to get out. And again, this goes back to the whole choosing your commander thing as well. The whole argument with choosing your commander works with the choosing your secret commander as well, where with the Baron Glory situation, okay, well, there is a card that certainly I don't need right away. So the getting it into my hand immediately, that's not important because that requires a whole bunch of setup before I get it out. and go to town. So there's a card I don't need right away. Whereas maybe the Urborg situation or the Painter's Servant situation or the Felden of the Third Path situation, there is a card that I really want to get, right? That is the situation, the Ishin situation, where it's a commander that I want to get out right away so I can start going to town. Same with the secret commander thing, where is your secret commander a card you need to get right away, or is it a card that you can just get eventually and start doing your thing, right? That's also something to take into consideration here. All right, that is it. That is all 10 more unique, interesting deck ideas. I was all over the map with this one. Again, I have some that are built around specific commanders. I have some that are doing specific combos. I have some that are doing aesthetic things like the whiteboarded idea. I have some very general open-ended ideas as well, like the secret commander thing. Just a bunch of ideas for you guys to run with. My favorite thing to do on this channel, again, I do it with a lot of other videos as well, where I'm just throwing out lots of interesting ideas that I come up with that you guys can use. Some of them I've actually done myself. Thank you to all. I'd like to give a special thank you to all my regular viewers, of course, that you guys are really important to the channel. And of course, my patrons as well. Giving a special thanks to all my patrons. I really do have I think, a really great relationship with my patrons where I talk to them regularly and interact with them regularly and play games with them regularly. And it's something that I never thought I would. I really enjoy it a lot. I didn't think I would get so much out of it when I first created my Patreon. I thought, okay, well, here's some extra income. But the interaction I have with my patrons, you know, the camaraderie, the similar mindset that, of course, a lot of my patrons have a similar mindset with deck building and with, you know, gameplay and all that I do, where I really enjoy that as well. So thanks a lot, guys. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.